how many times do we make our spouse, our children, or our parents pay for the same mistake?
Oof. Yeah, that's a heavy one.
Right. I mean, I want you to really let that question sit for a second. It is deeply uncomfortable, mostly because, well, anyone listening just experienced an immediate flash of recognition.
Oh, absolutely. We all do.
You hear that, and your brain instantly pulls up a very specific argument or, specific grudge or a person. Most of us, if we're being completely honest with ourselves, have done exactly that.
Yeah, and the discomfort is honestly the point here. That question actually comes from author Don Miguel Ruiz, and it essentially serves as the foundation for what we are looking at today.
Right.
We're diving into a document titled 206 Emotional Poison, written by John Baptist, who is part of the Capuchin Franciscan Order.
Yeah, and it's this really fascinating cross-section of philosophy and psychology.
Exactly. The text acts as a sort of diagnostic manual for how we unknowingly trap ourselves in these endless cycles of past pain.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because our mission for today's deep dive is to explore the actual mechanics of this emotional poison. Like how we trap ourselves, who is really on trial in our minds, and, how we can finally close those courtroom doors to find some peace.
It's such a vital topic because the biological and psychological toll of refusing to close those doors is massive.
I was reading through the notes on this, and the most accurate way I can visualize what this document describes is a faulty DVR.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Yeah, imagine a digital video recorder in your brain that is just completely broken. It completely ignores all the good programming. Like it skips over the neutral everyday moments of your life entirely.
Right, it doesn't record any of the good stuff.
Exactly. Instead, it's hardwired to auto-replay the exact moment someone hurt you or broke your trust or, spoke a harsh word. And it doesn't just save the memory. It upscales it to 4K, adds surround sound, and puts it on an endless loop.
That is a brilliant way to picture it. Because a physical wound heals, right? But this mental DVR ensures the emotional wound stays completely fresh.
Yeah, exactly.
And if we take that DVR analogy a step further, the timeline in the real world continues moving forward. The actual moment passes.
The person who hurt you might have even apologized.
Yes. The situation may have been resolved and physical life moved on, but psychologically, your mind stays frozen at the exact timestamp of the injury.
We always assume that making someone pay for a mistake means we're constantly bringing it up to them out loud, like picking fights every day.
But the text argues that the real damage is internal. The punishment is doled out because we are constantly pressing play on that faulty DVR days, weeks, and sometimes literally years later in our own heads.
Which brings us to the actual mechanics of this. In psychology, that specific habit has a name: rumination.
Yes, rumination.
We hear that word thrown around a lot in self-help spaces, usually just meaning like thinking too much. But the text digs into the actual clinical mechanism of rumination. And it's far more destructive than just being a little stuck in your head.
What's fascinating here is the psychological definition. Rumination is the act of repeatedly, compulsively revisiting painful experiences.
Compulsively being the key word there.
Exactly. The defining characteristic of rumination isn't just the memory of the event, it's the vivid, sensory recreation of it. Every time you replay what was said to you, your brain is actively recalculating what that mistake cost you, and the pain returns just as sharply.
So the physical event only happens to you once.
Right. But inside your mind, because of the way rumination hijacks your neural pathways, the event is happening again and again. As the text profoundly puts it, the body may be in the present, but the heart keeps living in yesterday.
But wait, if we know it hurts, why on earth do our brains keep hitting the replay button? I mean, are we just gluttons for punishment?
That is the core tension of human memory, honestly. You have to remember that episodic memory, remembering the facts of what happened, is a vital survival tool.
Right, like if I touch a hot stove, I need to remember it's hot so I don't burn myself again.
Precisely. Or if a business partner steals from you, you need to remember they are untrustworthy. That is learning. Rumination, however, is not about retaining the facts for future safety.
Okay, then what is it?
Rumination is forcing your nervous system to re-experience the emotional devastation of the event. The brain is desperately trying to solve a problem that has already happened.
Oh, wow.
It operates under this illusion that if it just analyzes the tape one more time, it will somehow find a way to retroactively protect you from the pain.
So it's the difference between saying, I know this stove is hot, I won't touch it, versus forcing yourself to remember the agonizing pain of the burn every single Tuesday just to make sure you don't forget.
That's exactly it. And this is where the research highlighted in the source material becomes so crucial. The text brings in studies from psychologists Michael McCullough and Lauren Toussaint.
Right, they focus on the mechanics of forgiveness and resentment.
Yes, and their findings show that rumination creates a biological split reality. When you ruminate, the threat detection center of your brain, the amygdala, lights up.
And the amygdala doesn't know the difference between a memory and reality, right?
It has no idea. The amygdala does not know the difference between a memory of a threat and a current active threat.
That means it's literally flooding your body with stress hormones for an event that ended 5 years ago.
Cortisol spikes, your heart rate elevates, your nervous system is thrown into fight or flight mode. Your body is physically sitting in your living room in the present, but your central nervous system is fighting a full-blown war in yesterday.
That is wild.
McCullough and Toussaint's research demonstrates a mathematical relationship here. Every minute you spend in active rumination is a minute your nervous system cannot enter a parasympathetic state to rest and repair. You just can't physically heal an emotional wound while you are actively slicing it open again.
Okay, so if rumination is the mechanism slicing the wound open, the text introduces a really compelling concept for who is actually wielding the scalpel.
Yes, the antagonist of the story.
Exactly. Don Miguel Ruiz gives this internal entity a name. He calls it the judge. We might normally call this our inner critic, but framing it as a judicial figure makes so much of our behavior make total sense.
The judicial framework is brilliant because it explains the motivation behind the rumination. We crave fairness, you know.
Right. When someone hurts us, it feels like an injustice, like an imbalance in the universe.
So the judge is this entity constructed by our ego to balance those scales. It acts like a prosecutor gathering evidence. It remembers the exact tone of voice someone used.
Oh, yeah. It remembers who was in the room, what you were wearing. It compiles all this into a pristine legal file. Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because it's like we have this tiny, overworked prosecutor living in our brains, completely obsessed with litigation. But a prosecutor doesn't care about healing the victim.
No, they don't.
A prosecutor only cares about getting a conviction.
And that is the fatal flaw of the inner judge. A healthy mind, when faced with a past injury, asks a productive question. It asks, what will help me heal? The judge never asks, what will help you heal? It only ever asks two questions: who was wrong and who still owes me?
Who still owes me? Man, that completely shifts the focus from your own recovery to seeking retribution. It means your primary goal is collecting a debt.
Exactly.
And if you are trying to collect an emotional debt, you are permanently tethering yourself to the person who hurt you until they pay up.
Which is an impossible scenario, by the way, because the debt the judge calculates is entirely subjective. There is no standard currency for emotional pain.
No, of course not.
Even if the person who wronged you apologizes 100 times, the judge can simply rule that the apologies weren't sincere enough or didn't cover the specific nuance of the pain, so the case stays open.
This naturally brings us to the collateral damage of running this invisible courtroom. Because if the judge is inside your mind, constantly demanding justice, calculating debts, hoarding evidence, who is actually paying the penalty?
That's the tragic irony of it all.
We tend to think that by withholding warmth or holding a grudge or just quietly resenting someone, we are punishing the person who wronged us. We think we're enacting justice.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we are actually just maintaining a shadow ledger. And keeping a shadow ledger requires a massive amount of cognitive load.
You have to keep the files organized. You have to keep the outrage fresh so the evidence doesn't degrade.
We exhaust ourselves maintaining this courtroom, all while genuinely believing we are punishing the defendant. But the text points out that our spouses, our children, our parents, or our friends often end up unknowingly carrying the heavy weight of wounds they genuinely thought were fully resolved.
I want you to think about a specific dynamic in your own life right now. Have you ever realized you were secretly holding someone hostage to a past version of themselves?
It happens so often.
They leave a dish in the sink, or they make an offhand comment, and suddenly your brain's prosecutor pulls out the file from a vacation 5 years ago where they were inconsiderate. You start cross-examining them in the present for a crime committed in the past, and they have absolutely no idea what is happening.
To the person on the outside, it feels like navigating a minefield blindfolded. They experience the coldness, the sudden distance, the shift in your tone, but they have no idea what they are being accused of today.
Right. They think you're just having a minor disagreement about household chores.
But they are actually stepping into a highly litigated trial regarding their overall character. Apologies may have been offered years ago. Tears might have been shed. You might have explicitly said the words, "I forgive you."
The physical reality is that life moved on.
But internally, the judge put the file in a desk drawer instead of the shredder.
And as long as that file is in the drawer, McCullough and Toussaint's research tells us that inner peace is biologically impossible. The two simply cannot coexist in the same nervous system.
They really can't.
So how do we fire the judge? How do we stop the rumination loop and close the courtroom doors without leaving ourselves completely vulnerable to being hurt again?
The text suggests that the very first step is purely observational. You have to notice the courtroom operating.
Like catch yourself in the act.
Exactly. Catch yourself in the act of rumination. Awareness is the prerequisite for choice. The text is very clear that we cannot erase the past. What happened, happened. The trust was broken. The injury is real.
Right.
But once you notice the judge pulling out the file, you possess the power to interrupt the neurological loop. You can actively choose not to rehearse the pain.
So what does this all mean? It requires a total redefinition of forgiveness, doesn't it? Because the word forgiveness carries so much cultural baggage.
Oh, absolutely.
People hear let it go or drop the charges, and they get incredibly defensive. They feel like dropping the charges is equivalent to saying, what you did to me was acceptable and you are welcome to do it again.
The author of the text anticipates that exact resistance. He is very careful to define what forgiveness actually is by clarifying what it is not.
Okay, so what is it not?
Forgiveness does not deny the wound. It is not toxic positivity where you pretend an injury didn't hurt. It does not excuse the injustice if someone wronged you. It remains wrong, objectively. And it certainly doesn't require amnesia.
Going back to our earlier point, you don't have to forget the stove is hot. You just have to stop pressing your hand against it to prove a point.
Exactly. The text boils forgiveness down to a very pragmatic definition. It is simply the refusal to let yesterday keep poisoning today.
I love that.
It treats the past hurt like an environmental hazard. The toxic spill happened back then, but forgiveness is building the containment wall so the poison doesn't leak into your Tuesday morning coffee with your spouse. It is a boundary you draw for your own protection, to protect your own nervous system.
Not a favor you do for the person who hurt you.
Exactly. But this raises an important question, and it's probably the biggest twist in the text. We spend so much time analyzing how the judge prosecutes our spouses, our parents, our children, or our friends, but the most active docket in that internal courtroom usually belongs to someone else entirely.
Wait, really, who?
The person the inner judge has been condemning the longest, and with the most viciousness, is usually ourselves.
Oh, wow.
We replay our own mistakes, our own harsh words, the moments we failed or broke trust, with a level of cruelty we would never, ever apply to a stranger.
That is so true. But why is the judge so much harsher on us than anyone else? Is it just because we have access to all of our own internal motives and doubts? Like, we know exactly what we were thinking when we made the mistake, so the prosecutor has a complete confession on file.
That is a huge part of it. We judge others by their actions, but we judge ourselves by our deeply flawed internal intentions. Furthermore, we mistakenly believe that self-flagellation is a form of accountability.
Oh, like if we beat ourselves up enough, we're doing the right thing.
Right. We think that if we just punish ourselves enough, if we just generate enough internal guilt and shame, we will somehow balance the cosmic scales for our past mistakes. We view self-directed rumination almost as a moral obligation.
But the exact same biological and psychological rules apply. Right? Beating yourself up for a mistake you made 10 years ago doesn't fix the mistake.
Not at all.
It just floods your nervous system with cortisol today. You are just drinking the emotional poison, keeping your own heart trapped in yesterday. The containment wall has to be built against our own self-judgment, too.
It really does. Healing only truly begins when the inner judge grows quiet, regardless of who is on the stand. That is the ultimate metric for progress. You have to evaluate the voice in your head. Is it sounding like a prosecutor, or is it starting to sound like an advocate?
That is such a good question to ask yourself.
Right. When a memory of a past failure or betrayal surfaces, does your mind immediately ask who was wrong and who owes a debt? Or is it finally able to ask, what will help me heal?
It is a profound shift in perspective, moving from a framework of retribution to a framework of recovery. Just to quickly recap the journey we've walked on this deep dive today, we started with the uncomfortable reality that we often punish our loved ones for past mistakes.
And we identified the psychological trap of rumination.
Right, how it literally tricks our nervous system into fighting ghosts. We expose the inner judge's courtroom for what it is, a broken system that prioritizes gathering evidence over finding actual peace.
And finally, we discovered that true forgiveness is about stopping the flow of emotional poison into our present lives. It is a radical reclamation of your own present moment. You are acknowledging that the past occurred, but you are systematically revoking its power to dictate your physical and emotional reality today.
And quieting the judge isn't a one-and-done event. It is a daily practice. You have to actively notice the courtroom opening up, recognize the file being pulled from the drawer, and consciously choose to leave the room. Swapping judgment for compassion, especially toward yourself, is the ultimate shortcut to a lighter, more present life.
As we wrap up, there is a final, lingering thought I want you to ponder on your own time. Since we know that forgiveness is simply the refusal to let yesterday poison today, think about the most active case your inner judge is prosecuting right now.
Yeah, think about that file.
Think about the file that is currently sitting open on the desk in your mind, demanding restitution. If you made the radical decision to drop the charges today, not to excuse the person who hurt you, but purely to reclaim your own mind, what could you build with all that freed up mental space tomorrow?